Welcome to this webinar, Social Value in Action, Case Studies of Social Value at Work, which is sponsored by Faithful and Gould. I am Thomas Lane, Technical Editor of Building Magazine. Following on from this morning's session, this webinar will explore the importance of social value in the construction and post-completion phase of a scheme. These real-life examples will provide a variety of examples of social value best practice and provide insight into new and innovative ways the industry can support and better the wider community. Our panel, drawn from across the construction sector, will each detail a case study around the delivery of social value on real-life construction projects. Each speaker will give a short presentation on the scheme, detailing how social value is applied during construction, as well as the social value delivered post-completion. So to discuss this, I am joined by Sarah Lambshead, who is the Strategic Social Value Lead at Faithful and Gould, and Mike Little, Head of Social Value at Morgan Sindall Construction. So the format of today's session will be each of our panelists will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes. And once the formal presentations are over, we will take questions from you, our audience. So I would encourage you to submit questions using the online question facility. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Sarah Lambshead. Thank you very much, Sarah. That's it. We can see your presentation now. So I think you can slide.
I think you're on my end slide though.
Yeah, if you want to go back to the beginning, but we can see it's great. We can see it all on screen.
Okay. You can't, can you?
No, you've kind of gone back to, yeah, you've gone off it. You need to, it seems to disappear. We now can see your PowerPoint program, but not the actual presentation. That's it. If you want to maximize that, and then you're good to go. That's it. Brilliant.
So I can see Mike. Is that right?
And yeah, and also I can see your presentation. So you're good. You're good to go, Sarah.
Okay, but I can't see my presentation. Is that okay? Is that right?
I see. Right. Well, you're on the first slide,
Yep.
which is just the introductory slide, and then if you want to move on to your next slide whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm Sarah Lambshead, and my work is in social impact and community advocacy. I've spent 15 years working in different roles within the built environment, including community engagement, social value, and account management in the education sector. This has been with Tier 1 contractors and also as a co-founder of a social impact consultancy, where I've worked with both the corporate sector to help them understand the challenges they have the solutions for, and with community-based organisations to help them leverage more from the social value offering. I've recently joined the strategic social value team at Faithful and Gould at an important time for the professional services sector, who are a year or two into shaping how they can best impact this space and play their part in helping to progress the aims of the social value movement. Professional services firms and an outcomes approach to social value. The importance of a truly multi-stakeholder approach. I worked on a project that was building a new build for a large academy secondary on a piece of land next to where the current school sat. The academy was in a designated area of local deprivation and serviced an under-resourced community with subsequent complex challenges. During our involvement in the project, we wanted to use the opportunity to listen to our client and understand where we could add the most impact with our approach to social value. We spoke with the head and staff at the school, and in these discussions learnt that although the school was only a few miles from the coast, a large proportion of the students didn't go to the beach, and there was a very low number of them who could swim or who had experience of water sports. The school explained that this issue was caused by families unable to afford day trips or the equipment, and was coupled with a lack of motivation to leave the local area, and they addressed this problem by arranging annual trips or camps that took students to the coast and gave them access to trying different kinds of water sports. They asked for us to contribute towards costs for these, and we conducted fundraising activities and made donations. This story made a good case study of a piece of social value and intervention, and the outcomes of what the students gained from the experience is obvious. However, it isn't the whole story.
Sarah, sorry to interrupt. You're still on your cover slide. I think I don't know if you meant to move on to the next slide, but if you
kind of I can't find where my slides have gone now, so I just thought I'd go with my story.
Celine, I don't know if you're in the background. I mean, could you
go from my slides?
I'm just going to share the slides now.
Celine will do it for you, Sarah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We had a rush with IT having to give me access to this application 2 minutes before I came on. My laptop wouldn't give me permission, so I don't think that's helped.
Never mind. It's up here now, so I don't know if you can see that, but if you want, Celine, move on to the next slide. I'll just say move on to the next slide.
That slide we're on is fine, but it's okay because this bit's a nice story. Everybody's had their lunch. You know, you're feeling quite sleepy. I hope you've got a nice cup of tea. Just enjoy the story for now.
Great.
So we're back at the school. We're back at this academy where you know, the problem that we were trying to solve was that there wasn't enough access for families going to the beach. So the whole story was actually that during further stakeholder engagement activities, we interviewed a number of parents and the subject of the beach trips came up. From this, we learnt that contrary to the assumptions the school had made on why the family didn't use the beach, the majority of them didn't drive, and they didn't access the beach because it was a 3-change bus journey to get there. Because of our role in the infrastructure around the project, we were able to make the case to the relevant departments, and a change to the bus route was able to be implemented. The calculation of the value of these 2 initiatives would be one thing from a financial proxy point of view, but we tend to experience our understanding of a human-centered outcome more viscerally. So take a minute to think about the difference that was made by those 2 different approaches to the social value creation. Take a minute to think about the feelings that you're imagining based on the impact of the change that this meant to those families. For example, I feel excited. Well, I'm trying. I also feel really nervous because I'm doing this talk. But when I wrote this, I felt excited. I feel like I'm about to get the bus to the beach myself. I can smell the salt, and I'm imagining throwing myself into the sea with all my mates. The point is that only through a more thorough process of active listening and delving deeper did we even uncover the opportunity to make such a long-term impactful difference. Prevention is better value than cure. The more we can focus social value creation at preventing a social challenge from occurring, the greater the impact. The uncaptured benefits that a human gains by having access to nature, freedom, and play like you do by going to the beach. We have to remember the massive place of possibility that we exist in for creating that kind of change in a community from our work in the built environment. The most 3 significant barriers to achieving social value, I'll draw out from the slide that hopefully you can all now see. We have lack of consistent definition and measurement. We have lack of knowledge and skills on how to effectively embed social value, and we have an absence of leadership and ownership. A lot of this can be mitigated by having a service that can devise, carry out, and measure social value strategies. As a multidisciplinary professional services firm, we have the opportunity to start to understand and shape social value outcomes really far upstream from a project on the ground. When we look at the slide that hopefully you can all see, we realise that these upstream initiatives are so important because they start from the very beginning. The strategic brief, the outcomes need to be clearly defined at the earliest opportunity. They need to be embedded in the project brief. We need to make sure that whenever we're looking for infrastructure planning, investment, that the social value case is defined, particularly for the investment case. When we're looking at the procurement for design and delivery teams, social value needs to be very high on the agenda. It needs to be built into how we're going to assess and bring people onto the teams. Through design development, we have so much opportunity to make a massive difference, because we're already into the design thinking of the human centered outcomes for how we're going to be building the project. And the social value is about the additionality we create when we're thinking of the human centered designs. Through the construction process, which Mike will be talking about when he comes in, we have so much hands-on opportunity to be delivering social value activities with the people, but through the themes and the outcomes that we've ascertained throughout the beginning. Then we've got the operation of the building. Going forward, the best kind of social value initiatives are the ones that create innate social value that can be continued by the people that use the building beyond us. Next slide, please. The programme that we are designing at Faithful and Gould to try and help us embed this strategic look at bringing social value in at the earliest stage is part of an initiative we're calling Left of Zero. By starting the process of local needs analysis and engagement with the client stakeholders, including the community and community anchor organisations, we can start to define the social challenges most important to the stakeholders and start to embed the aligned desired outcomes. We can ensure that these outcomes are channeled into all briefs and procurement for different stages of the project, and that the outcomes are readily accessible for everyone to understand and build their own approach to social value around, so that we are all working together to create meaningful impact. This also sets the tone from the beginning of an approach that is collaborative and based on shared goals. Next slide, please. These are figures from a project, which was a school called St Mark's with Southampton City Council. And the figures that you can see here show that how us starting at stage 0, when we had the outcomes in place in the procurement process from architect appointment onwards, these are the kind of figures that you can achieve. The contracts were won with a very large focus on the social value section of the bid, as Southampton City Council were very keen to leverage as much social value creation as possible. The contractor bid was won by, as Mike will tell you, Morgan Sindall, and the project has only achieved such ambitious stats because of the intentional and collaborative approach that both firms have taken. I'm sure that it'll come out in the questions later, but something that we really wanted to touch upon was how important the relationships and partnering between consultants and contractors are in achieving shared social value outcomes. The students go into the new building here in September, and we're looking forward to spending that first year of handover conducting surveys and interviews and workshops designed to help us hear and understand the human-centred experience of the social value interventions from the humans themselves experiencing them. I'm sure that someone will be able to turn them into financial proxies with a nice graphic, but I'm there for the stories. I'll just go into more detail on another aspect mentioned in this case study of a professional services approach to social value, which is around local needs analysis. Next slide, please. This is the process that provides a profile of a local community and its future needs. Now, I want you to all go back to the example we had before of the academy and the families and the beach. And I want you to think about that while I list the factors involved with local needs analysis. It considers the economic, social and environmental needs of local residents and businesses. It can cover demographic trends, inequalities, experiences and expectations, supply and demand of services, there's the bus routes, gaps and priorities. When undertaken as far upstream as possible, it informs the social value outcomes to be achieved, which are then woven into the investment case, design, construction, operation, and post-completion stages of a project. Consultancy around this enables the client to focus the efforts of social value creation around a few strategic areas. Areas of impact that align with the organisational mission, value, and business goals, areas of impact that are of concern to primary stakeholders, and the areas of impact that are sustainable and can be supported and maintained in the long term. It is then embedded into the procurement process, and bids can be written with social value aims that are clear and open. Every stakeholder organisation that becomes involved with the project then gets to think innovatively and strategically about where they can make the most impact to achieve the outcome results determined for that project. This brings me on to the importance of playing to your strengths in social value creation, which is the final factor to think about today in relation to our example. When creating social value plans, what skill sets and resources do you have that make you commercially successful, that you can repurpose for social value aims? From a professional services approach, we need to question what skill sets and resources do we have that can be used to create social value. If you are a painter or decorator, this might be donating your time and expertise to painting the ever popular community centre fence. However, if you are a multi-disc consultancy with expertise in project management, programme management, logistics, design, and with a large HR, IT, finance, legal departments, you're based in fully equipped offices with lots of event space, you're better placed to try and find ways of sharing those resources. An example of this is as an independent consultant during the pandemic, I worked with a local food bank on a social value plan that involved a logistics company with their eye on a planning permission for a new warehouse. They planned to volunteer at the food bank, which was received with a resigned acceptance because in some ways it actually created more work for the permanent members of staff. It's a tried and tested trope that the voluntary sector should be grateful for any act of support. However, because we knew from previous engagement that these conflictions existed for the food bank, and with the newly released PPN 0620 Social Value Act that emboldens such conversations, we had the opportunity to leverage really meaningful social value from the logistics company. They levelled up their social value offering and switched over time working with the food bank to sharing their logistics expertise, which truly made a massive difference. The work they did with them streamlined aspects of the operation and helped to cut down on the 80+ hours a week that a lot of the permanent staff at the food bank had been working, meaning better quality of life and less risk of burnout for them and a better service for the users. Methods that had been created for a profit-making logistics company were just as needed by a business with a social aim, and it was the partnering aspects of recognising that changed the way social value was viewed. From the planning permission front, it also made for a much better case study. Thank you.
Great, well, thanks very much, Sarah, for that. I've got just a quick question before we move on to Mike. I mean, I guess you're doing a lot of upfront work, aren't you? Because you're engaged early on in the process. I mean, how much of the sort of social value outcomes do you define before the contractor's involved? Because you may not even have a contractor at the early stages of a project. I mean, do you define a lot of it at the beginning and then say to the contractor, right, you've got to do this? Or do you sort of, you know, wait until they're on board?
Sure. I mean, this is something that I'd like to chat with Mike, you know, later on in this, because it kind of it plays out that classic example of the linear order of who is appointed to a project first. Yeah. I think obviously when a consultant is involved earlier, they get that opportunity to be able to do the stakeholder engagement and to work with you know, the clients and design teams or whoever is involved at the very beginning on, you know, what it is that the community needs. That local needs analysis can develop themes. And I think that it's those themes and the general outcomes that you want to achieve that can be really instrumental if you put it in at the beginning, because what can be really useful is if you're appointed to a project later on down the line, to have an idea of where to start, because otherwise what we end up doing is reinventing the wheel and recreating, you know, multiple versions of the same kind of activities. But equally, you know, I feel that I've worked on contractor side in social value for 10 years, and contractors are really far ahead in their maturity around, you know, the social value offering. So I would hate for it to sound like I'm suggesting that the consultants would be telling the contractors how to do social value, but I think that what we can utilise is the experience and expertise that contractors already have in the social value sphere, and we can combine that with the opportunity that consultants often get to be further upstream, and what we really need to be doing is working much closer together in those partnerships.
Okay, well, thanks, Sarah. Maybe we can explore that more in the discussion once Mike's presented. But so it is now over to Mike Little to present his case study, which I believe is a secondary school in Wales. So over to you, Mike.
Yes, it is. Yeah, thanks very much. Afternoon, everybody. Right, let's struggle with technology again. I'm just going to see if I can get my my presentation up. Can everybody see? Or can anybody? I want to show my screen. I want to show my presentation.
I can see your yeah, I can see your screen. You just want to maximize the presentation so we don't see the menu bar in PowerPoint.
There we go. Can you all see that?
Yeah, it's good to go.
Fantastic. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so my name is Mike Little. I'm the head of social value with Morgan Sindall Construction. I've been working in this type of role really since 2008 with other businesses, all construction. No construction training. I've just kind of learned my craft, if you like, you know, since being involved. What I want to talk to you about today really is finding the value in social value. Social value is a great sort of buzzword that people throw around, and quite often it doesn't get thought about properly. And we can all go off and do things to tick a box to say we've achieved CSR or we've achieved social value or community benefits or whatever sort of title you want to put on that. But we really need to think about why we're doing things and who it's going to benefit. Is it going to benefit us as a contractor because we can tick a box to say we've done something, or is it going to actually benefit the communities in which we're delivering projects? And really that should be the aim. So what I'm going to start with is just a very brief case study on a comprehensive school that we've delivered recently in Neath Port Talbot in Southwest Wales. We'll talk about some of the outputs there, and then just a few other things that I want to talk about, and we'll go on to question and answers then, and I'm sure there's going to be some really interesting questions asked of us. So this project is a new build school for Neath Port Talbot Council, like I said, in South West Wales, nearly a £28 million project. The original school was very run down. Lots of feasibility studies were done on whether a refurb would have been a better option, but for whatever reasons, we won't need to get into that, but they decided that a new build was the best option. So we were successful on that. Now, it was quite unfortunate that this project started just a few months before we all went into national lockdown, and was handed over a few months after we all came out of national lockdown. So the project team carried on working throughout. You know, as Morgan Sindall and lots of other contractors put lots of safety measures in place to enable them to continue delivering projects, making sure our workers were safe. But what that meant was, of course, our workers were kept safe and there was lots of distancing and lots of other things put in place. But it meant that the team couldn't do their usual social value interactions, like showing people around a project, like engaging with school pupils in their classroom, like doing work experience and lots of things like that. So there was a period where we couldn't deliver any physical activity. So we tried to do virtual activity like a lot of other schools and a lot of other businesses did. This particular school actually asked us after a while, can you please not keep pestering us to do some virtual interaction because they were actually struggling with engagement of their pupils. So they needed their pupils to engage with them to do their lessons, let alone engage with external businesses to talk about careers and things like that. So the best way for us supporting them in that situation was to actually just be hands off, let them engage with their pupils and deal with those. You know, we know that there were a lot of young people struggling through those times, so they needed to get on and do that. So as soon as we were allowed to and were able to, we went back in and said, right, we've got these fantastic opportunities. We'd love to engage with your pupils. We'd love to engage with your feeder primaries and lots of other things like that. And then we were able to start delivering things. But during those months of lockdown, where, you know, lots of us were fortunate to be able to work from home, other people weren't so fortunate and they were able to work and things like that. We just had to leave them alone, and that was actually the best way to deliver value for that school community. Leave them alone and let them crack on with it. Oops, I've gone on. I didn't want to go on to that. So I just want to pick up on just a few of the social value outputs that we were able to achieve. If I can move my camera around there. Okay, so what we were able to achieve really was we did provide jobs for local people. We did provide new entrant employment and apprenticeships and work experience in some of the months before and after that dark time. So we were able to provide 54 new jobs, and that was through our supply chain. That was working in partnership with our client, who was Neath Port Talbot Council. That was working with local shared apprenticeship schemes. And so local people were getting jobs. Lots of them were finding themselves out of work because of the pandemic. And so we were looking at other sectors really coming in to work for us and retraining and upskilling so that they could work on our construction projects. A number of apprentices were provided, and the number of school engagement or pupil interactions you see on the screen is around about half of what we wanted to deliver really. You know, it's still a good number, over almost 2,500 pupils that we were able to engage with and talk about the construction industry and talk about STEM and careers and lots of things like that. But obviously, because of the time that we couldn't, what's happening now is the project team, even though the project is handed over and the pupils are in this school and it's a fantastic facility, the team is still going in to deliver activities and support for the school because they missed out on it during the actual project build. And another great highlight there is 90% of that nearly £28 million project spend was actually spent with businesses in Wales. And that's always a key driver for Welsh projects, but it's a key driver for local authorities all over the land. So to achieve a 90% spend in Wales when we're in a very small town, kind of halfway up a mountain, delivering a school, that was really quite a good outcome there. So the other thing I want to touch on is I've put some highlights there. The project partnered with an energy education specialist. Anidar is how you pronounce that for those of you that are not Welsh. They delivered STEM days to primary schools. Now, obviously, we're building a comprehensive school, but actually there was a need in that area that was brought to us by the council that their feeder primary schools were also losing out on interaction with local businesses and interaction with career specialists and things like that, again because of the pandemic and other economic factors in that particular area. So the project funded those STEM days, and it was delivered to over 300 pupils, 2 primary schools, and they were talking about energy and climate change in a real sort of fun and interactive way. And we know that obviously climate change is just really high on the agenda everywhere we go right now. And so to access young people at that age and talk to them about climate change and see the excitement and the understanding that they have around that was really, really good. And the other thing is about social enterprises. There's an organisation called Thrive Women's Aid, fantastic social business. came to the project team, and initially they were training up women to just to become site cleaners, just to give them an opportunity to get into the world of work, and for various reasons that we don't need to go into, they were real sort of struggles there for them. So initially we engaged that, and then there were lots of other initiatives that Thrive wanted to start. They were starting to do a catering service, and then they were starting to do site cleaning, as not just cabins, but sparkle cleans and things like that. So we kind of worked with them and helped develop that social business as well. So that was a real highlight of that project. Talking about some sustainability measures as well, 96% of the waste created by that project was diverted from landfill. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that might have been an impressive statistic, 96% waste diverted from landfill. Now I think that's probably quite a standard. The high 90s across contractors is probably quite standard. I think as an industry, what we now need to look at is not just reducing the waste that we're sending to landfill, but actually reducing the waste that we're creating. Waste should be designed out of our new buildings, and it should be designed out of our refurb projects. I think it's a given at the moment when projects are being costed that there's a cost in there for 10 skips or 20 skips or whatever the size of the project is. Well, that's fine, it's being paid for, but it's not addressing the problem of the industry creating waste. So that's really somewhere that that we're looking at as a business, and I think the wider industry probably is and needs to, even more than it is. We need to design out that waste so that we're creating less. And that 96% waste diverted from landfill might end up being several tons rather than several hundred tons. And that has to be a better outcome. Some other sort of sustainability measures, really, lots of water reduction measures used across the project wherever possible, vehicle sharing, quite standard thing. Lots of photovoltaics on that project, which was thought of as quite a strange thing to think of, really, because it's in Neath, which is not known for its sunshine. It's halfway up a mountain. It's very dull and windy and very rainy quite a lot of the time. But the local research was done, and it was found that yes, you would still get a really good return on those photovoltaic systems on that building. And so even the design of the location of that was considered to maximise that use and reduce as much energy usage as possible. 100% of the project spend on this Kevin Syson Comprehensive School was with SMEs. So 90% we've already said was in Wales, but all of the contractors that we engaged with to deliver this project were all SMEs, and we're really quite proud of that. And actually 4% of that spend was with social businesses. Now, 4% may not sound a lot to many people, but we're working on a framework at the moment that's targeting 1% of project spend to be put with social businesses, simply because within the construction industry, social businesses that are relevant for the construction business are sometimes quite hard to find. And so a 1% spend as a target is actually still considered a stretching target. But on this project, the team achieved a 4% spend with that. And so again, that was a real sort of landmark achievement there. So I'm just going to move on, if I can. There we go. Okay. So this is where I really want to talk about social value outcomes and considering the value in social value rather than just ticking a box. And I'm going to give a brief example of a project that we delivered probably about 2 or 3 years ago. The client was a local authority, very, very engaged in social value. And we all know across the industry there are local authorities and clients that are really engaged and are quite mature in the social value sphere, and there are other local authorities that probably have some way to go in that maturity journey. This was a very social value mature client that we'd worked with before, and they really knew what they wanted to achieve. There were 3 projects being built within about a half-a-mile radius. 3 different contractors, Morgan Sindall being one of them. And the client came to us and said, we want you to work collaboratively wherever possible, especially where social value is concerned. And they actually came to us with an idea. They said, right, there's a beach. There's a beach theme today somehow. There's a beach not far away from the 3 projects. We'd like you all to come together and go and do a beach clean. Go and do a litter pick. We'll arrive there fairly early in the morning. We'll get it all across social media. We'll tell the community this brilliant thing that we're doing. We're cleaning up their beach. And everybody thought, what a fantastic idea. And this has come from our clients, so they must know what they're talking about. When we all turned up on the morning ready with our bags and our litter pickers and all of that sort of thing, a van was driving away, a council van, filled with bags and bags of litter. And the driver jumped out and had a chat with us, and it basically explained that that local authority was fantastic at keeping that beach clean. And they had a really rigorous regime of going in on every other day and cleaning that beach up. So we were there ready for our photo op with our litter pickers and bags to pick up loads of rubbish, and there wasn't any around to pick up because the council had already done such a fantastic job of doing it. So there was an opportunity where our client, who was the council, asked us to go and do something that really should have been a benefit to that local community, but another department within their council was already doing that anyway. And I think that just, for me, that highlights sometimes about considering the impact of the ideas that we're coming up with. You know, quite often, maybe a big team or maybe at the start of a job, a project team might say, I know, we'll go and paint that community group's fence, or we'll go to a food bank with crates and crates of food. Have we thought to have a conversation with those organisations to ask if that's actually what they need? Really, the question we should be asking is, how can we help? Not, can we do this? Because the discussion might be, and I know Sarah already gave that discussion about the food bank, we want to volunteer. Well, actually, they could have done with some other expertise, and that was more of a help and more of a value. That's real value to that organisation. We should be asking the question, how can we impact the communities that we're working in? How can we actually create and deliver value to the people that work and live and learn in that area, rather than us just thinking about some ideas that might tick a box? People that live in an area are the experts in that area, and very often as contractors we don't ask that question enough. And so I've put a bit of a wheel there, and in the middle of the wheel, those total commitments are Morgan Sindall's total commitments of enhancing communities, protecting people, developing people, improving the environment, and working together with our supply chain, which we're looking to rebrand actually as value chain. But because as a project lead, as a contractor, we've got that contact with all of the stakeholders that are noted around that wheel. Our clients are our stakeholders, our value chain, the communities that we work in, education at all levels, internal staff. Now, sometimes going off and doing a beach clean to get volunteers within your office that maybe are very new to social value or don't think that social value fits into the job that they do, that's a great way to get them involved. And from that, they can then see the benefit. And we've done that a few times where people in the office in our Cardiff business came out and helped at an event, you know, a bit of manual labour, had a fun time, a couple of bacon butties at the end, brilliant. But from that, what that's resulted in is them asking, how else can we help? Now I've got some expertise as a planning manager or a bid manager or a supply chain manager. How can I use what I do to actually deliver some social value in our communities? And that's a really great progression. The local authority have put there, and people. I was asked a question by my director, what do you mean by people on this slide? And really, I just think it's to draw our attention to the fact that when we want to deliver value in an area, it should always be people focused. Any benefit that we bring should be people focused, and that's sustainability, people focused. It can be economical. It can be anything that we think about really should benefit the people in that area. And so some of the outcomes then that I've noted down in those blue boxes, empowered communities really is important. It's really important to enable communities to further develop for themselves. Rather than just turn up with a bag of cash, we need to help them. And that's where the question comes in. How can we help you so that the experts in that area can tell us what they need? And then we can use our expertise, we can use our resources to actually bring some real value to empower those communities. Reduced inequality. There's a big drive on carbon reduction, and we know that there's a climate crisis at the moment, and I know that there are people that don't believe in that, but the science tells us everything we need to know. But actually, in transitioning into a low carbon society, there are going to be marginalized portions of our communities that are going to struggle with that transition. And so the carbon reduction discussion also centers around people, because we need to make sure that we recognize those inequalities and actually address them. And that brings us on to improved life chances. Why are we going to paint the fence if it doesn't actually benefit somebody? But we could go and talk to somebody about a career progression. We could go and mentor somebody into helping them find work. We could use our expertise to help them in whatever manner that they need help in. And that's where those improved life chances really come into play. Responsible procurement, again, we're thinking about people and we're thinking about businesses. This example of 100% spend with SMEs that I talked about with the Kevin Systrom Comprehensive School, these are small to medium companies that were working on a £28 million school. That's giving them more examples that they can use when winning work. That's also developing them to work for a major contractor. Perhaps they haven't done that before. And so it's upskilling their workforce as well. And it's also increasing the capacity and diversity in our value chain. The more opportunities we provide for marginalized portions of society to come and work with us and gain understanding, the more capacity and diversity that we can actually bring into our value chain. And I've talked about reducing carbon and reducing waste, and all of that is about designing that out at the outset wherever possible. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up my talk with you this afternoon. I think is let's consider where the value is in social value, and let's chase the value. Let's not just tick a box. Yes, there's monetization, and local authorities and clients need to show the return on their investment. So we do need to monetize the activities that we're doing, but that shouldn't be the end goal. That should be a result of what we're doing, because the end goal is empowering the communities that we work in and serve. So I think that's me. So I'm going to stop sharing that. Thank you very much for listening. And I think we're going to be open for questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mike. It's time to sort of discuss some of the issues that have been raised in your presentations, and I'll just encourage our audience to submit any questions that you might have. So the first question I was going to ask is, are there any procurement routes which really sort of help further social value, help and aid and abet it more than other procurement routes?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. I think the way that I would probably answer that is early engagement is key. The earlier that we can talk to our clients, the earlier that we can talk to consultants and professional services companies like Sarah's company, the better the outcome can be. Because quite often we'll have a bid will come in, and they'll say, okay, these are some social value questions because we have to, because whatever Social Value Act or for whatever funding stream, we have to put them in. But sometimes those social value questions aren't even scored. So it doesn't matter what you put in there because you don't actually get awarded the project over the way that you've done it. And then they'll tell you that the split between financial and quality is sometimes a 70-30 split. So there needs to be kind of equal footing between financial and quality. With all businesses, we all need to make money. Clients have finite budgets. We understand that. But sometimes cost and value mean different things. And we kind of need to bring the conversation more to value than to cost. It's a difficult conversation to have because of those finite budgets. But I do think that is where we need to head.
Thank you. Sarah?
I think that an example of where frameworks have been really good at embedding social value early on is around the fact that the frameworks like SCAPE or Pagabo, people like that, who really understood the benefit of embedding social value, then they have become very mature in their approach, and anybody who gets on that framework has to demonstrate a true understanding of what's expected by social value. And it means that then, other clients who perhaps aren't so advanced with their appreciation of social value can use a framework like that, and they can unlock the social value for them. Because ultimately, over the next few years, the key thing is to help upskill all clients and all procurement teams to understand the value that they can leverage through their procurement. But as Mike said, at the moment it can be hit and miss whether, if somebody doesn't understand the power they can leverage for their communities or for social organisations through the power that the procurement process has, then they might not even score the social value answer. But then you've got very mature, local authorities who have absolutely, grabbed the opportunity with two hands and are running with it. So councils, local authorities like Manchester, Surrey, Bristol. I'm based in Bristol. Bristol City Council has a very robust strategic social value policy, and where something like PPN 0620, mandates 10% of a bid in social value answering, Bristol City took that 10% and raised it, and they now expect 20%. So 20% of a bid marks is available in the field of social value, which is why it's so important to get a really good understanding of how to embed it within your organisation, and to understand the value of storytelling and case studies and how to prove the outcomes which you get by talking with the people who've benefited from them, because 20% of the marks isn't going to be achieved by listing numbers of apprentices or how many times you did or didn't do a beach clean.
And I mean, if a local authority like Bristol gives in the weightings gives a higher percentage to social value, does that have any impact on the sort of overall cost of the project?
It can do, yes. Yeah, absolutely. You're not necessarily going to be able to deliver the best social value at the cheapest price. No, that is a fact. But do you know what? A lot of the time, local authorities are dealing with a lot of complex problems, and they're responsible for how their communities exist. So in a local authority, they're not only responsible for procuring the consultants and the contractors to build a school or a leisure centre or something like that. That's one pot of money that sits in one part of the local authority. However, there's other departments in those local authorities who are dealing with a pot of money that's for obesity. It's a pot of money for NEETs, people that are, it's a pot of money for people that are in long-term worklessness. There's a pot of money for children and young people services. And the thing with social value is that if you can leverage some of the solutions to some of those problems that you've got individual pots of money from while you're getting your new school built or your leisure centre, then it makes a lot of sense for the local authority. And I think that a comprehensive social value plan can demonstrate where the social value that will be achieved alongside building the commercial aspect is going to have a big impact on those different social challenges the local authority is trying to solve, it's a no-brainer. And often saving money is the same as making money. If you can save the local authority the money in those pots for those social challenges, it's, you know, it's an easy way for them to understand that by spending slightly more on a build, but it's guaranteed and you're held accountable to achieving the levels of social value in all those other areas. That's, you know, it's a new way of working. It's a new way of doing business. It's a new way of measuring, isn't it? It's a risk return impact look at the triple bottom line, instead of just how do we get something for the cheapest amount of money, and who cares what it does or doesn't do externally.
It comes back to communication as well, because very often the clients will say, this is what we want you to achieve, so tell us what social value you're going to deliver for this community. And then the contractor is awarded the project, and then quite often the client will say, there we are then, go and deliver. Well, actually, it should be a partnership, because the local authority, again, is the expert in that area, and there are organisations and departments that they can put us in contact with to assist in the delivery of that social value. It shouldn't just be down to one company or one organisation to deliver real value for a community. It's a partnership, you know, and that's really quite key. And the best sort of social value outcomes in any area will come about because of collaboration. And it's collaboration across many stakeholders, rather than we are Morgan Sindall and this is what we're going to do, as an example. That's not the best way to do things.
No, there's a term for it, which is social brokerage, which I think Social Value UK coined, but where, you know, the idea is that the private sector organisation partners and develops relationships with the community-based organisations, because those community organisations that are on the, you know, on the front line delivering services that help with the social challenges, they are the expert in the social challenge, not you know, a global consultancy, not a contractor, because, you know, we're experts in what we do, but what we need to be able to do is use what we've got to be able to shore up and support and add value to what the community experts in that area are trying to achieve. So partnering with you know, the Thrive Women organisation that Mike referred to, partnering with you know, local food banks, partnering with people who actually, you know, you can have a longer term relationship with, and therefore create meaningful change together, because those organisations, they are like a stick of rock with social value running through it. Their whole reason for being is to create social value. What we're trying to grapple with is that we are, you know, corporate organisations who only ever had to focus on one thing, which was to make enough money to stay in business. We are now showing that there's a purpose beyond that profit, but we are learning just as much from those community organisations about how are the best ways to go about that.
Thank you. We've got a few questions about measuring social value. So, I mean, I understand there's different ways of doing it, but I've also got a question sort of saying, you know, you can track the financial social value. You might want to, you know, quantify in the number of jobs created or number of apprentices that you employ. But, you know, how about the more the qualitative aspects, improving people's lives? How do you measure that? And are the metrics out there that you can use, or is it impossible to actually do that?
It's not impossible, no. There are resources on Social Value UK that people can go to that will help them with that. There are different ways of creating surveys and questionnaires and ways of interviewing people so that you can listen for what those outcomes are. And there are tools that you can then, in the same way that some of the financial proxy tools work, where you can put information in at one end and it will give you a measurement at the other that isn't in a financial proxy. Because I think that the important thing is to remember that, especially legislation is also channeling people down this way. They are expecting to hear the qualitative just as much as the quantitative, because quantitative only takes you so far. Like, data is only ever as strong as the stories behind it. So vitally important. It's almost like what you do at the beginning with the community consultation. So everything that a developer would be doing, you know, to try and get a project over the line in terms of community consultation, in terms of making sure that they, you know, are that their consultation is accessible to as many different people as possible, that usually unreached voices are still included, that there's a mix of in-person as well as online interaction. You apply all those same community consultation techniques at the other end of a project and throughout the life cycle of the project.
Right, so you really got to do it all the way through, pretty much. Yeah.
It's about tracking stories. It's absolutely about tracking stories. One thing that I didn't mention about that case study, there was an initiative called Career Changers that was funded by CITB, or part funded by CITB, and it was all about, it was centered around women in construction, because we know that women are very much underrepresented in construction, especially on site. And so this was all about getting women who were in other careers, so not workless people, but people who were in other careers that wanted to change jobs. And we actually supported we supported two ladies that came from, one came from care, she was a care manager, I think she was, and the other one was working in retail, and they actually came on and trained as ground workers. One of them got their dumper license, one of them got their crane driver's license. They spent a year with us learning to be ground workers. They were taken on by the ground worker companies that trained them, who helped pay for the licenses that they required, and now they're working all around the country with those groundwork companies. And that was a talent pool that those companies hadn't thought of before. And probably it was a job that those women hadn't thought of before, because nobody had told them, by the way, you can do this. So it was presented to them as an opportunity. They took that on as an apprentice, and both of them are earning at least twice as much as they were in their other professions, because we know construction is a well-paid industry, even though people think it isn't. And so there's a real story there that, yes, you could probably find metrics to highlight the financial outcome there, but exactly as Sarah said, there's no story behind. If you just put a number, there's no context to it. So the story behind that number of two women's lives really changed for the better. They were in work, they were quite happy, but they saw an opportunity to go into a different profession that for them has meant that it's just improved their lives entirely, because better opportunities, better job that they prefer doing, better salary. There's the story behind a pounds and pence number. So it really is tracking those stories to highlight why that number is actually value rather than cost.
And, you know, you can repurpose those stories as well for another, you know, massive aim of the construction industry at the moment, which is the attraction, retention, recruitment issue that we have. You know, if you're trying to attract talent from, you know, the generations that are coming into work now, they want to hear that the company they're joining has stories like that. Data isn't important, you know, in terms of how somebody weighs up whether or not they're coming into the construction industry or not, or how to weigh up who to actually come and work for. And, you know, there's a massive talent drive at the moment in the industry, like Mike said, you know, particularly for, you know, as diverse talent as possible. And so having stories that showcase, you know, representation and how, you know, a company approaches what it does from a commercial point of view, but also from a purpose point of view, are really, really useful in distinguishing yourself from the peers around you.
Okay, thank you. Believe it or not, we're pretty well up out of time, actually.
High five, Mike. Some of these other panels have 6 people on, you know.
So, I mean, there's quite a few questions we haven't answered. It's obviously a very big topic. We could probably talk about it all day, but sadly not in this session. But so I'd just like to thank you both very much for your presentations and insights. It's been a really interesting discussion, and thank our audience for listening. And just to flag that you will be able to download this presentation again to watch it offline if you want to do so. So all remains to say have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.